What if I told you your next must-have craft supply is already in your kitchen and maybe even in your trash? Today I'm going on a treasure hunt through my kitchen to find everyday unexpected items I can use on my next papercraft project. I'll test them out so you don't have to and let you know which ones are my favorites. Stick around because later I'll show you the one supply you've definitely thrown away this week that you'll now want to save. Hello creative friends, before we talk trash, that's something I never thought I'd say, I need you to think outside the box for this video and keep an open mind to the true potential for the things you already have. I'm looking for crafty things in non-crafty places, and it's my hope that this is just the beginning of the non-crafty crafty things you find lying around. Non-crafty craft things? On my search, the first thing I found was a group of items I know we all have. Can I use kitchen wraps, things like baking paper, aluminum foil and brown paper bags as cheap alternates to specialty paper? I also need to know, can they be embossed? It's time to find out. I'll start by creating some smaller panels. I need each of these pieces to fit inside my embossing folder. I'm really hoping these will make fun card front bases, so I'm going to stick with a fairly small size here. I'd also like to test out this brown paper bag. I get these for free whenever I buy mushrooms at my local grocery store. The top section I'll save as paper layers, either in my scrapbook layouts or maybe in a junk journal, and this bottom section is the part that I'll try embossing. Look at that, it's the perfect fit. Through my Sizzix it goes, and here's what I'm left with. I love how this turned out. It works so well, and I even noticed that it removed some of those creases that were in the bag. I have even higher hopes for the baking paper now. Through it goes, and I did notice that I did get some tearing. I'll show you this here. So what I'm going to do is retry it with a piece of cardstock. There's a little embossing folder hack for you. Adding in a plain sheet of cardstock with your thinner paper will help protect it from tearing. That's better, and I love it. Next up is the aluminium foil. Yes, that's how we say it here. And look at this, it turned out so well. The only thing I'll say is that I'm not sure how durable this would be. I would absolutely go with a thicker alfoil if you want to try that one. Here's another look at all of the sample pieces, and as I was flipping through these, I had an idea. In my recent embossing folder hacks video, I tried the double embossing technique where you emboss and then heat emboss, and I thought, why not try it here with the baking paper? I also wanted to see if I could just add some ink, and the answer to both of those questions is no. Neither of those techniques worked on the wax paper. Even after leaving the ink for days and days, it would not dry and it kept coming off on my finger. The embossing powder made a huge mess, so I'm thinking the paper is just too waxy for either of these things to work. I really loved working with the baking paper. It's a great alternate to vellum, and in some cases I actually prefer it. Its texture is softer and I really like how it crinkles. You can also use it to create super cute shaker pockets, which I'll use as the base of a card. Let me show you how. I've gone ahead and coloured in this stamped image, and here's a look at the sequins I'll be using. I wanted to show you these because you'll notice the colour does get very muted when you add it inside the baking paper. All I've done here is sandwich two of the pieces together and then stitched around the edge with my sewing machine. Once I know the design for the card, I add extra stitching to stop the sequins from going behind any die cuts. It's a great way to save on sequins because you'll actually end up using less. I've added the shaker pocket onto a piece of white cardstock and then added that onto my card base. I've then added in a sentiment and the card's complete. I'll be sure to link the supplies I've used below. Later, I'll show you a piece of trash that creates a shaker pocket that's even easier to make. Next up, I just happened to notice this placemat. It is vinyl and it has this texture to it, which I thought might make a really fun background. For this technique, I've pulled out my brayer, my Pink Fresh Studio ink, and a bunch of scrap pieces of cardstock. Just a note though, you will need a water-based ink for this one. I'll start by layering down lots and lots of colour onto the mat. Then layering my card on top, I'll use the brayer to apply a really even pressure. What I'm looking for here is almost like a stamped image. So that was a disappointment. It did not work, but I do have a plan B. This is why you need a water-based ink. I'm going to add water to make the ink a lot more juicy. What a difference just adding water makes. I can actually see the ink now. Now that I've worked out the technique, I can try lots of other things, like varying the amount of water I add and also mixing and matching the colours I use. For this one, I used slightly different shades of the same colour just to get some variation. For this one, I also wasn't super careful about adding even pressure, and that gave a different look as well. There are lots of things that you can change up with this technique, and not just your ink colours. Try adding different amounts of water and different ways of pressing that paper into the placemat. Every single impression that I made was a little bit different, and I actually really like that about this technique. I was really surprised at just how much fun I had creating these. I really love how these samples turned out, and I just realised because the placemat is so big, I could use this same technique as a background for a scrapbook layout. So I will have to give that a try. Also, if you happen to have those smooth vinyl placemats, you can use those as an ink blending mat or a watercolor palette. If you happen to have placemats like these, you can use them as a template for stitching or as a stencil for mixed media. Let's move on to another item I know we all have in our kitchens, and that is kitchen sponges. Forget the dishes, let's use our sponges for art. If you're into creating your own backgrounds, getting messy and mixed media, I think you're really going to love using these. I'll be using white gesso for this technique, so I want to use a cardstock that's a little bit deeper in colour. The first thing I really want to try is just adding the gesso on using the sponge. Now I'm using a very light hand here to just tap the surface. That's not quite the look I was after, so I do have to get a little bit braver here. I'm working with a lot more gesso here, and I'm going to spread it out evenly with my brayer. I'm thinking I can use the sponge as a bit of a stamp and get an impression of that texture. Okay, so that didn't work either. Turns out I need to get even braver. I'm going to apply the gesso directly onto the sponge this time, and I'm going to be quite generous. This is starting to get messy, but I think that's actually a good sign. I am going to use the same amount of pressure to press the sponge to the paper, and this worked a treat. This was one of the tests I was most anxious about actually. I really do wish I was more confident with mixed media and would try things like this more often. This did end up being quite foolproof actually, because the sponge tended to stick to the paper, so it was really hard to smudge. Look at me go, being all brave, and if I can do it, so can you. Here's a look at the completed card. I've added lots and lots of layers for this one. I love how the pattern of the gesso really breaks up that background. It almost looks a little bit like lace. This could be a really nice way to use a little more colour in your cards, especially if you're not confident working with bolder colours. I hope you give this one a go. If you're enjoying enjoying these ideas so far, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button like a sticker to a scrapbook. It's just one simple click that says, "I'm cheering you on, Gwen," and lets me know you're really enjoying my videos, so thank you. The other big category of potential crafty things in unexpected places is food packaging. And I'm sure your kitchen is filled with these. Things like cereal boxes and cartons can be used as mini album covers or to add dimension to your scrapbook layouts. Why spend money on foam sheets when you can use your recycling instead? But there was one thing I found that seemed a lot more like trash than treasure to me. Keeping an open mind, I really wanted to see if this would work. Could this be a fun stencil? Let's find out. I've trimmed the ends off and down one side so that I can lay it out nice and flat. To make it easier to manage, I'll cut a section that's about the same size as the card base that I want to create. Next up, I'll need some ink and I'm going to apply it with this foam dauber. This is super simple to do. The biggest hurdle you'll have is the mesh moving. It does slip and slide around here quite a lot, and I can't think of a clever way to secure it in position. If you want clean, crisp lines, then this technique is not for you, but I do think you'll like this next idea. Do you know what this kind of reminds me of? Bandage gauze. Card makers and scrapbookers have been adding that to their projects for ages. So I was thinking, why not add this to a card in the same way? Look at the beautiful texture and softness that it adds to this card. I love the dimension, I love the pop of yellow, and I really love how this card turned out. Let me know in the comments, are you keen to try this idea? And which of the ones I've shared so far is your favourite? Remember that one supply that I mentioned right at the start of the video? The one you've definitely thrown away this week? Now's the time for me to tell you what it is. I promise after this, you'll never look at your recycling the same way again. Here's what I've found that I've set aside for my next papercraft project. And it's definitely something you've thrown away this week. Envelopes, those really boring ones with the printed insides, like this one from my bank. These make super easy shaker pockets because the window is already built in. Let me show you just how easy this is to do. Step 1, trim off all the boring bits. Your shaker pocket is now ready to go. Step 2, add your sequins. I told you this was going to be simple and easy. Step 3, glue down the open edge. A liquid glue is best, especially if you're working with smaller sequins. Fold over the edges to make this any size you like. You can also use them to create envelope mini albums. And sometimes you get really lucky and find an envelope like this one. Never have I ever opened junk mail so carefully. I've also found a lot of packaging in my kitchen, not the cereal boxes or cardboard that I mentioned earlier. This is the fun kind of packaging, like tissue paper. All of these papers have come from parcels and packages that I've had delivered, and from now on, I'm saving them all. I love the texture and I'll be sure to use these in my scrapbook layouts and mini albums. The next non-crafty craft thing I found was bubble wrap, and I think this is going to create a really fun textured background. Let's give it a try. The first thing you'll need is some Versamark ink, and I'm going to apply it very generously across all of the bubble wrap. You do want to be generous here and you don't want to miss any spots. I'm going to work quite quickly here using the bubble wrap as a stamp, pressing it down and into the paper. Here's the print, and here's why we have to work quickly. It's now time to add some embossing powder. I am feeling a little extra sparkly today, so I'm going with this gold glitter. Now on to the best part. It's time to heat set it. How pretty is this? Look at the shine. I can't wait to turn this into a card. Here's a look at the same technique on a darker piece of cardstock. And here's my finished card. I kept this one super simple. I didn't want to take anything away from that stunning background. I will be posting this one off to encourage a friend, and I love that it adds quite a detailed look without any bulk. I'm going to be making a bunch of these backgrounds. They'll be ready to go the next time I need a card. I love how this turned out, and the print is so pretty. I can absolutely see myself using this technique again, not just on cards, but on scrapbook layouts too. I recently took a trip to Bunnings. It's our big box hardware store, and on my way out, I grabbed their free magazine along with a couple of paint samples. Since then, these have been kicking around my kitchen bench. Once I finally decide on the colour for the walls, I can use the paint samples in my paper layers on my scrapbooks. I'll also use the photos and elements from the free magazine in my junk journal. You might have also seen similar magazines at your grocery store, so if you get them, save them too. I'm also going to keep my eyes out for catalogues and flyers delivered to my letterbox and save those for future projects. Some of these might be filled with pretty images I could use in a mini album or junk journal. You might have seen my recent video where I visited a bunch of op shops in the search for craft supplies. Well, one of the things I did notice a lot there were greeting cards, and that got me thinking, are there some hiding in my kitchen, maybe in that junk drawer, just waiting to be repurposed? Yes, there were. I found these and I've now saved them from the kitchen and popped them right on into my craft stash. So next time you're about to throw something out, stop and think. Could this be my new must-have craft supply? From baking paper to placemats, the possibilities are endless. But not everything you need will just be lying around the house. There will come a time that you do need to purchase supplies, and that's why you need to watch this video next. I tested budget versus expensive supplies to see if those expensive supplies are really worth it. I spent over $450, so you don't have to. So don't buy a single craft supply until you watch this. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.